Okay, bows and bow ties. I'm hoping you can hear me because I have my phone plugged in and I hope this is not messing with the audio. I should have checked that before I started this. But I just want to talk about this degenerate culture of ours, and then we want to cry racism all the time. I heard a clip from the Breakfast Club, and someone made a comment about, like, I find it odd that, while that golfer was arrested for trying to go around the police when there was a traffic fatality, that they came out with this video for Diddy. Like, it's like insinuating that it was racism. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, this is the kind of stuff that drives me crazy. I don't think that has anything to do with racism. And we have to stop saying everything is racist. First of all, if someone has engaged in degenerate behavior, we have to call a thing, right? So what happens is oftentimes people will say, like, oh, well, so and so did this. I'm like, well, it doesn't mean that what you did was not wrong, right? That's the reason why we have a culture that will go out of their way to support Bill Cosby or R. Kelly, now Diddy, Dr. Dre, when Chris Brown was a dodo bird, Carl Malone, right? So if you're saying that the statute of limitations on things have run out, then that's one thing. However, to sit there and say, like, oh, well, we shouldn't consider prosecuting or acknowledging the fact that there were some people who have done some bad things because maybe others aren't, being, acknowledged for those things. I'm like, that is the most asinine, ridiculous behavior. So I always tell my kids, I said, look, if two people did a bad thing, but one person gets caught, does it mean the other person didn't do a bad thing? They're like, no. I'm like, right. So they're like, but what? If the one person is not fair, I said, I know it's not fair. It's not just if one person is penalized for something and the other person is not. But then again, if they're penalized for doing a bad thing, they still did a bad thing. It just means that not everybody gets penalized justly. So it drives me crazy when we try to support such degenerative behavior. I'm like over it, over it. So, and I feel like the industry in general, I don't care if it's music, entertainment, whatever it is, it encourages bad behavior. That's why you can have your Weinsteins and Epstein's or whatever it is running around doing these things, right? It's like a self-looking ice cream cone. It's meant to support itself, and everyone is it's encouraged. So I think the thing is, when I was listening to the clip from the Breakfast Club, and people were calling in, and I don't know if I would say defending Diddy. What I would say is, from what little bit I heard, I just heard like a clip from it. I feel like that what people don't seem to understand is no one is saying that he can't ever redeem himself as a man. What we're saying is what he did was just plain old awful. And he spent time, because this is similar to what I said this morning. I'm like, you came out and lied. You said that you didn't do these things, you're going to clear your name or whatever like that. And then when people present the evidence, now it's like suddenly you are going to try to get therapy and you're so ashamed. And that's the part that makes it, like, obviously the people who were harmed by his actions, but also this claim that there was going to be these changes, that things were, that you were going to do these things, and that you're ashamed of what you've done. And I don't know. I mean, look, who am I to say that he wasn't telling the truth? Only he knows that. God knows that. But I just feel like I think the community, because to who some would deem as idol, um, they just want you to forget that they've done this bad thing. I feel like it's very indicative of the community because we don't want to indict um, our celebrity or leaders or whatever, right? We want to see them or perceive of them in a certain way. So I just feel like we are constantly in this very degenerate, like, support, like we support this whole like degenerate behavior. deplorable behavior, because we have this disdain for the legal system. And I get it, don't get me wrong, it hasn't been just towards people who look like us, but it doesn't mean that these people shouldn't be held accountable for just, like I said, I think for people, they want to gloss over the fact that, like first people are like, oh well, the statute of limitations have run out. I'm like, he harmed someone, so it doesn't mean that we can't talk about it. It doesn't mean that we can't acknowledge the fact that he was not a good person. It doesn't mean that we can't talk about the fact that we have to shift the paradigm of how we want our future, our culture to be viewed, right? We continuously support this bad behavior over and over and over again. There were people who called in and like, he was just a man, and people make mistakes. Of course we know people make mistakes, but what we're seeing is this is like on another level of like, there's some serious help that needs to be done. There are serious reparations that have to be provided to people, and it's not just a financial reparation. There's whole mental, like people were physically harmed, financially harmed, emotionally harmed, mentally harmed by this man, allegedly. So that's what I mean by reparations. When you say that you're accountable, how are you accountable? I don't understand what you mean by accountability, Mr. Sean Puffy Combs. So it kind of just was like irritating me to hear these people call in and almost like want to put arms around him. That's not to say that God's children can't receive his love, but I'm like, I don't know what's going on with him. I don't even know if he truly believes in God, because a lot of people say they believe in God, but and then once they're comfortable, they call themselves gods and stuff like that. I think the reason why this is obviously, when you see a video, I actually took the time to watch the video this time because I didn't want to see that video, and I was just kind of like, why would you treat someone like that? I think for me, it just goes back to like the culture. What is going on with our men that they think that's okay? Why would you want to put your hands on a woman or anyone really? And they're never believed that he had hordes of people who were surrounding him, and they co-signed his bad behavior. There was no consequence until that video came out. You had hordes of people who did not support Meg Thee Stallion when she was harmed by Tory Lanez. He shot her. He has been found guilty. I'm not going to say alleged. He's been found guilty, and no one supported her. You had people like Drake or whoever it was. I think it was Drake, who made rap records, like disgusting songs, like and comments about her. A man shot her. It's weird that this culture promotes this kind of behavior. And then the men, when I say things like the statute of limitations have run out, I'm like, you sound ridiculous. You sound ridiculous. So anyway, I'm just kind of like in this space where when I think about that, when Rihanna was beat by Chris Brown. And now I will say, I did hear the part with the Breakfast Club. They brought up a good point. Chris Brown is still paying the price because, he put hands on Rihanna. I think they both love each other, if I remember correctly. But what they're saying is he never came out and lied about it. And that's not to say that we should be giving him like kudos for that. What I'm saying is Diddy was lying. I'm really tired, by the way, too. He flat out lied. And so when people say, how is that different from Chris Brown? I'm like, Chris Brown never came out and lied. He was like 3 seconds years old when he did that. And no, he's still paying for it. Because I don't know if he's showing a whole lot of contrition about it either, but that people are still holding him accountable. And like I said, I personally wouldn't want to do a whole lot with Chris Brown because I don't see a whole lot of growth. But definitely, at the time, Diddy being 40-something years old, putting his hands on her and then coming out and lying. And the only reason why he's ashamed is because he's been caught. Anyway, I'm just saying, I'm really sick and tired of the community supporting this bad behavior. Like, it's so asinine to me that we want to run to, oh, the statute of limitations ran out. That's what you're thinking of, instead of thinking like, how can we stop this? How can we heal? Like, we say the dumbest things, like, we got to remember he's just a man. Yeah, we sure do remember, but people can also be punished. People can also be brought to justice. There were people who were going crazy when Bill Cosby, like, because I think the statute of limitations ran, so I think that's how he got out. I don't remember why he got out, but it doesn't absolve him for doing bad things. And a lot of people, their whole purpose is to say, well, you didn't prosecute these guys because maybe they don't look like us. I'm like, just because people aren't being prosecuted justly has nothing to do with the fact that somebody did a bad thing. And so people always want to equate their punishment to somebody else's. And I'm like, we need to get our people to stop doing these things. Like I said, Karl Malone, because he had money and people probably wanted to treat him as a cash cow. I mean, my understanding is he fathered her baby with a 13-year-old when he was like in his early 20s. You got Bill Cosby. You got the R. Kelly situation. You got Sean Puffy Combs. You got Dr. Dre smacking around Michelle allegedly. I don't know if it's been officially approved, you know, call it proven. And you got the Chris Brown situation. What I'm saying is, I know I cherry picked these people because these are not the names that came to my mind, but the fact of the matter is they did a bad thing. And so sitting there crying racism, like I heard earlier about, like, oh, they're only bringing this up because this guy, it was convenient that they dropped this video because this guy, the golfer who went around the police. I'm like, that is the most asinine response to anything. Let's say it was true. Let's say that's the reason why they brought the video out. It doesn't mean that he didn't do that Sean Puffy didn't do something. I mean, this man ran down a hallway in a towel, grabbed this chick, threw her to the ground, kicked her. Oh, it's just really gross. And we would rather say, but he's just a man, like, and give all these qualifiers. I'm like, yes, you're right, he's a man. But he was 40 something years old doing this to this young. It's too much. We are in love with supporting degenerate behavior, and then people get mad, like when the few people call it out. They get mad when their so-called heroes are being either made or shamed, even though I'm not big into shaming culture, but like if they're being shamed or um, handled by the law. I'm like, well, you know what the law is. You know what right and wrong is. So if you know that the law will not be prosecuted for every walk of life justly, then don't do these things. I'm just really disappointed listening to people call in and wanting to, I don't know. And like I said, it's not for me to provide redemption, right? That's between him and God. Like, but what I will say is people should be allowed to say, hey, I'm disgusted, I'm disappointed. This is, without somebody jumping in, like, oh my goodness, and you guys gotta understand, he's just a man and people make mistakes. How many? How many of these mistakes were made? That's just what we caught on camera. And now all of a sudden he's disgusted and ashamed of himself. Was he when he put out his statement that all of those allegations were untrue and he's going to clear his name and time will tell? Was he disgusted then? Was he disgusted when he was beating her? I don't know. I just, like I said, I'm part of the community, but I'm not part of this whacked out weirdo culture. I don't subscribe to that. Um, and people will probably want to like come after me for it. I don't care. I don't care. But I'm just like, I'm just over it. Like, all of these people just, the whole community is trash. And I think a lot of it centers around playing some of the same bad music over and over again. That's all we do. We don't love women. We don't love people. We don't love children. We don't love anybody. We are dissolving into a state of lawlessness and learned helplessness, actually, if you ask me. And if you have enough money in promoting this bad culture, you can get out of a lot of things. Didn't Weinstein get out of jail or something because he had enough money for the lawyers to throw at his case? Yeah, I'm done with it. All right. Well, I said what I said, and if anybody's mad about it, you are welcome to be mad. I welcome your comments, Don't be disrespectful, but this man is a flat out monster. Diddy is a monster.